Good morning, everybody. You are talking to Dr. Sharon Cook with the ProcureSmarter podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are going to be talking to Miss Sally Faulkner of the Faulkner Locke Art Group. But before we get to Sally, let me introduce you to my company, ProcureSmart. We are a boutique FF&E purchasing, hospitality focused agency. We specialize in conversions, new construction, and renovation. We can handle everything from your OS&E to all your FF&E needs. If you have a project coming up, we would love for you to reach out to us and give us a chance to bid on it. All right, everybody, let's talk to Sally Faulkner. Hi. Hi, Sally. Good morning, Sally.
Morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
Thank you for doing this. I just saw you like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, man.
How did you enjoy BDNY?
It was great. I have to say, it was just great to see people, to get out, and I don't know, just to see everyone, all your friends again,
Yeah, it really was. I had my doubts about going, but I'm actually glad that I went.
Yeah. It was good. So much fun to be in New York too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, are you ready to get started?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Did you get the list of questions that I sent over? You're good with everything?
I did.
All right. We're going to keep this very free flowing. Let's talk about whatever you want to talk about. I want to hear what you guys are doing new, but it's about 20 minutes and we'll be good.
Okay. No problem.
All right. So I am talking to you, Sally Faulkner of Faulkner Locke. Sally, you are the founder of a full-service art consulting firm in Atlanta.
That's correct.
You have a long history in the art world, and I would like to know how you got started.
Sure. So, I get a lot of questions about how you get a job in the art world. That always happens. Sometimes I teach at some of the various colleges, and I have to reassure parents that their children can make a living. That's always a very popular topic for them. And so my father was an electrical engineer who specialized in nuclear power. So when I went off to college, I told him I was going to study architecture, and he considered that close enough to civil engineering to almost be a real job. So, so I went to Rice University in Houston, Texas, mostly because my brother, one of my older brothers, was at Georgia Tech studying architecture. So obviously I could not stay in Atlanta and go to the same school. So went off to Rice. And in the midst of doing architecture, this was in the 80s, mid to late 80s. So I don't know, women on the construction site jobs, that was still quite hard, actually. And I was an intern for a summer as an architect at a local firm here in Atlanta. And so, of course, not to date myself, but I did 35 of the Chick-fil-A's that it was just when food courts and malls were starting, and they were super popular. And I literally hand drew the plans. They would send you oh, this is our spot in the mall. And you would hand draw in all the equipment and everything that they needed and then send it back to them. So one after the other. And I thought, I'm not really sure this is what I want to do.
Right. So you weren't feeling very passionate about your Chick-fil-A.
No, I wasn't. A lot of people feel passionate about Chick-fil-A, as they should, but not that. And we were doing other projects too, but anyway, so then I told my father that I was not, after I graduated from architecture in art history, that I was going to go get my master's in art history, which he took very badly, but I did it anyway, from George Washington. and in DC. So I moved up there. And that was just like eye-opening at the time, because George Washington specialized in basically teaching people how to be curators, because they fed a lot of their students into the Smithsonian.
Oh, okay.
Because there's a lot of museums up there.
Right.
And so you could start working for museums. So I became a researcher at Phillips Collection, a beautiful small museum up in DuPont Circle in DC. That was amazing. And I got to study Mark Rothko with the Mark Rothko Foundation, and the person at the time that was writing the Rothko catalog resume. And we would go down into the bowels of the museum, and get to pull out the paintings and examine them and everything. And it was amazing. And then I worked at an art gallery, and then I became director of the University of Maryland's permanent collection, and their gallery. And then my husband, we had gotten married, and in between, my husband got transferred to Atlanta, which I was excited about, because of course my family lived here. And so it was right before the Olympics in 1996.
Right.
And so there was, all the buildings were really sprucing up for the Olympics. And so I got a job as an art consultant for a person who did corporate work. So we did art collections for Bank of America and all the law firms, things like that. And we did some changing exhibits, like in some of the tower buildings. So in the lobbies, they would change the shows out, kind of like a gallery of local artists. They would change the shows out every 2-3 months. So we would do that, etc. And then through the Atlanta field, I found another firm, and they specialized in hospitality. And I started doing hotels with them. And that's just where that's like, it's the perfect combination of my architecture degree and the art history curation. Because we work on a lot of historic hotels, we work on a lot of new builds, and so they're sending me the plans. We're talking about the elevations, and here at Faulkner Locke, we really specialize in like 3-dimensional artwork. So we talk about the rigging and the lighting and the blocking and all those kind of like details that you need in order to create the art.
Now, when you first got into the hospitality side of it, were you at all surprised at the different thinking of artwork in a museum world and artwork in a commercial hospitality space?
Yes, in 2 ways. One is, now it's not personal. And I say that because we create collections that speak to the location or the traveler that's staying there. But it's not, like, for the owner, it's not so much personal anymore. So it's not maybe it's not his personal taste. So there's a lot more freedom in that, in being able to put those collections together.
Yeah.
It kind of opens the door to a lot of different things. The second thing that happened is I learned that a lot of artists and art galleries they were very hesitant to work for someone that they think is commercializing art. That was kind of the thought process, especially then in the early days of hotels really buying artwork. And that thought has definitely changed through the years, but it was a hard thing to get past. It's like, wait, you're making money on this? And I was like, well, how am I different than an art gallery that also sells your work?
Yeah, I did my very first, really what I consider a large art installation last year. It was the AC Greenville, had about 130 pieces of commissioned artwork. And I learned so much on that project because, I'm used to, for the most part, when you're doing hospitality, you're doing prints. Right. And it's either brand specified or it's something that's very commercialized for the masses. So when you start picking out commissioned artwork and it you're you're trying to think, is this going to offend anybody? Or, or you deal with an artwork, all these artists. I think I had like 90 artists on the project with all the personalities. It can be very overwhelming to talk to an artist who understands business and dollars and an artist who really only understands art.
Right. Exactly. I tell designers, owners all the time, I'm like, you do not want the artist to be calling you.
Right.
Because that is a whole nother world. They don't understand the process. They don't understand how long it takes sometimes to finish these projects. And some of them are willing to work with a designer who's like, yeah, I like it, but it could use more blue,
Right. Yeah.
I really like, and others are like, okay, I can do that. And then some are like, no, this is what I've made. This is what you get, so just like working your way through that process is time consuming and sometimes difficult.
It is, but I enjoyed it. There were frustrating moments of dealing with artists who were like, I'm the artist and this is how I do it. This is my process. And me trying to explain to them, yes, you have a process, but I have a building being constructed. I need you to work with me. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was a huge learning experience for me. So since you've been doing this, I know in my short career, I've only been doing this about 22 years, which is a long time, but in the grand scheme of things, not. How have you seen people's drive of putting commissioned artwork in the hotels change? Are they more willing to invest those dollars than they were previously?
We have always kind of specialized in the higher end of the hospitality. And so we've always done more commissioned art, I have to say, than kind of the standard room programs or anything like that. So we've been fortunate in that case. It all depends on the project and the location is and the brand standards, but location. So you can do a courtyard, which is normally a standard program, but if it happens to be on the water, like surrounded by a convention center, suddenly you're doing custom commission artwork. So it didn't even matter so much of the brand, sometimes it matters really the location. And you saw that kind of change with the Ritz-Carlton is the greatest example. Is the Ritz-Carlton's basic philosophy was similar to the McDonald's chain, right? McDonald's created the chain so that you could go to any city and you knew what food you were going to get, right, when you traveled through. So it's the same fries, it's the same burger. So you knew exactly what you're going to get. So when Ritz-Carlton started building their hotels, Hortz, the main owner, that was his philosophy. He's like, I want it to look luxurious, and luxury to me means this kind of like old-fashioned English look. And so when they first built the Ritz-Carltons, that's what they looked like. And then it took them a long time to come around to, well, maybe the Ritz-Carlton in South Beach shouldn't look like the Ritz-Carlton in California or whatever, so when that kind of changed, everything just became commissioned art more and more. So,
right.
So we do a lot of those kinds of projects. And we also, we worked on a job in Bermuda for 6 years where they just kept building. They built a golf course, and then they built some timeshares, and then they built the hotel, and it just kept going and kept going. And they had hired us because they said from the beginning that they wanted it to be 99% Bermudian artists. Like that was their number one philosophy. And so they would literally have us come in and stay on the island for like a week at a time just to interview all the different artists, go to their studios, everything, so that we could purchase on the island and use all the local art.
That would have been so much fun. That would have been so exciting.
I missed that project. 6 years in Bermuda is really nice.
I mean, what's not to love about Bermuda, but then staying and like talking to the artists all day long would have been amazing.
Yeah. They gave me a driver, and we would just drive around the island and visit everybody. It was great.
That is amazing. All right, well, let's talk about what you see happening out there in the art world. Like, what new things are you working on? What new techniques?
The trend right now is a lot of artists coming on site and painting murals. So it might be an interior mural, it might be on the outside of the building. I think you've seen, the exterior murals more and more and more
Yes.
of that, most definitely. Chalk murals, we've just done tons of them for restaurants, for hotels, and for multifamily now. Multifamily is just kind of following in the hospitality trend, and doing more and more artwork. So, and actually next month we'll be doing our first mural for a senior living project, which
Really?
I know, senior living, that has come a long, long way.
Right.
I mean, it was behind the hospitality, it was still in the Prince realm. And now that they've decided that it shouldn't look like a hospital. And so it's really kind of going after some more hospitality like designers, and it's really looking more, especially the public areas, the amenities are looking more and more like hospitality. So
I
it's
love
been
that.
interesting.
I love that they're doing that. Let's talk about how you work with designers and how you work with purchasing agents, and what does that flow look like for you? And then what do you wish designers or purchasing agents were doing better or knew when they came to you?
I think that I just need more time. It's when you have 130 pieces, like you talked about, commissioned, and you have to talk to 90 artists, it takes more than 2 days to quote that.
Right.
And I just never have enough time to put all the information together. They're always like, can you have this quote by Friday? I'm like, no, but okay.
Yeah.
So just kind of telling them that. And also I wish that they, especially for designers, that they would bring us on earlier or just let us be part of the conversation earlier in the project, because a lot of times I could help them a lot with budgeting, for example. If they know that they want, a feature wall that's 15 feet wide or whatever, to tell them what kind of budget range that they need, even if we don't know what that art is, to budget it properly. Because what happens to me is they have those kind of walls, and then they're like, oh, but we have $1,000, and I'm like, you can't even put wall covering up there.
Right.
For that. Like that's not going to happen. So,
Right.
if we could talk about budgeting and lighting, and what if you spend $15,000 on a piece of artwork but you don't light it? It's kind of wasted at
Right.
that point. And so figuring out those locations, figuring out blocking. If you want to do a multi-piece composition on a wall, it's really helpful to have blocking so that we have that support in there. Things like that. Rigging, if it's hanging from the ceiling. So just having those kind of conversations before it's come too far and it's too late to add that.
Well, and I think it's important for designers and purchasing agents to remember that you bring a whole skill set that we need to take advantage of.
Right.
You don't just sell art. You understand the whole dynamic behind it.
Exactly. And we don't charge for that service. So it's not, we don't get paid actually until the purchasing agent issues the purchase order and buys what we've been working on for sometimes years. So, and that's a whole process. So, but we want to make the project look like you want it, like see your vision in that project. And in order to do that properly, I think the more we're involved we are, the better.
Right. Okay. Let's talk about, now you have a partner, right? You have the Locke in the Faulkner Locke. Tell me about your partner.
So Brendan, she was actually the one that I met when I was working for the corporate art consulting person. She was working for the hospitality firm, and she said, Sally, why don't you come over here? And so we worked together. I was there for 7 years, and at that point, she had been there years before me. So I think she was there a total of like 12 or 13 years. And at some point we kind of looked at each other and said, why don't we do this together? And so as we like to say, we held hands and jumped. And so we left the firm together and we created Faulkner Locke. So, we did that in 2005. And so it's been 16 years and
Wow.
it is amazing. We always say that it's so much easier when you have a partner, right? Somebody to talk to and bounce things off of and ideas and everything. And at the beginning, we were smaller, right? Our first job, though, was the Cloister, which is a major resort on the coast of Georgia. And it was right before the G8 summit, and they were restoring the whole hotel. And we just walked into that job, and we've been blessed ever since, truly.
That's amazing. So you never had a moment where you were like, I think we all, as when you start your own company, you have this moment where you're like, I'm not sure if that was a good, should I go back to corporate? Should I fight it out? So you never had that moment where you're like, I don't know if this was a good jump?
We didn't have a moment. And like I said, we were really blessed with some great jobs right from the beginning. We had a doubt, I would say, when we left. We were like, we're not sure who was going to follow us, who's going to stay at our old firm. We sat down with our previous boss, and we literally divided up the clients. You keep this one, we'll keep this one. And it was very easy. And I don't know what to say. It was truly a blessing. But I will say, we got one piece of advice from a friend, and I tell everybody this when they start their own business, is what happens. They said every week you need to meet with your accounting or bookkeeper, or if you're doing it, just meet with your partner. And you need to assess like where you are, what you should be doing, how much you have, that kind of thing. And what it forced us to do is we get so caught up in doing the day-to-day part of our job that you forget about, like, if you're really busy now working on a project, you forget about marketing for next year, for the next project, because you're so focused on today. Right. And so when you have to sit down and like evaluate everything every week like that, it forces you to say, oh yeah, I need to send out these invoices because I haven't done that yet because I've been too busy, and I need to get paid so I can pay other people, right? Or I need to market, follow up on these jobs here because that's the next job. And so it always makes you think about the future, which it was super helpful.
That is great advice. Well, you have already told me that one of the things you specialize in is the 3D art, right?
Correct.
Right. Is that your favorite medium to work in, or coming from the museum side of things, do you still have a love of all things?
All things art, most definitely. All things art. I love to create different experiences. I went and took 2 of my employees to Art Basel last week in Miami. That's an annual fair for people that aren't aware that there's just lots of art to see. I mean, you walk into the Miami Beach Convention Center and you can be standing next to a Rothko and then standing next to Sheila Hines. And I mean, it's just art everywhere, and it's an amazing experience and super inspirational. And that's kind of the environment that you want to be. You don't want to specialize just in the antique, and you don't want to do just the contemporary, right? You just want it to be kind of a gathering of all the arts, and it makes sense, and it tell a story, maybe an individual story for that location. So
do you still get excited when you see new artists out there? Do you go to that? Do you still like, oh, I love all that stuff?
Yes, and I have to stop myself from buying all the time. For myself.
Yeah.
Like, no, I can't have it. I would owe so much money to artists.
It is a very expensive hobby to
collect.
Expensive
hobby. It can be, most definitely.
Yeah.
But what ends up happening is you end up buying, you've worked with some artists through the years over and over and over again. So you end up buying pieces because you have this personal relationship with them, and I mean, it reminds you of them, and so that's what happens, I would say, the most.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I know you've already what I would like to hear from you. What services are you guys providing that maybe the other art consultants on the scene are not providing? What are you doing differently? What are you doing better?
I like to call us true art consultants, and I mean that in a way that we do not manufacture, we do not produce anything here. So similar to the Bermuda job, if you come to me and you say, I want to use this artist and I want to use these artists from this local area or whatever, what we specialize in is researching what's available within your range and utilizing those artists. And also, let's say if it's less expensive or faster to produce it in California, if it's a California job, or Seattle, if it's a Seattle job, then doing it in Georgia, then that's what we do. We move around the production. The other thing that we have is we have a full service installation team. So if the artwork is not your standard FF&E package and the general contractor or your FF&E installers don't want to install it, then we come in and we'll install all the artwork ourselves. And that really helps, especially with all the three-dimensional pieces. And let me just tell you that it's probably going to be faster and easier and less expensive because we are faster at it. I don't know if you've ever seen an installer who's not familiar with security hardware install artwork. It takes forever.
Yes.
For someone to do that if they're not doing it on a regular basis.
Right. Or you hire an art installer and they don't bring rigging with them, so they can't reach spaces.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and so we'll come in, we're lift certified, so all these things that, we have the liability insurance for us to be on the site, to use the equipment, everything like that. So our installation team is awesome. We also have a warehouse here in Atlanta that so it's open 5 days a week, and it has receiving dates, and so all the large scale artwork gets shipped into that, and it's a safe place to have art. And sometimes owners don't want to send the art to the regular warehouse, right? Where it gets lost with mattresses and TVs. Yeah. Or maybe it's not climate controlled. So so we have that as well.
All right. Tell people, how would you like people to get a hold of you?
I think the easiest thing is to go on the website, and our phone number is there and our email is there, and it always gets answered, most definitely. So it's just faulknerlocke.com, no and in the middle or anything, and or they can call here to the office, and we have a team of about there's 9 of us right now, and everybody's just, I'm blessed to have them. They're all women. I love my office. I love all of them, and they would be happy to help.
Well, Sally, thank you so much for doing this. This is going to make a great episode.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's super sweet of you to ask.
All right. Have a nice day.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye. That is our podcast for today. Thank you to Miss Sally Faulkner for being our guest. If you are enjoying this podcast, please support the show by subscribing. We are on iTunes, Spotify. You can even find us on YouTube. So support the show if you are enjoying us. We would love to hear from you. Everybody, have a great day and see you next week.